We are Life Church Livonia.
All right, Life Church Livonia. It is so good to be here with you guys this morning. Why don't you find your seats? I love that you guys love talking to each other. I also love, I got to tell you, Flora here, it was her 94th birthday this week. I told her when she turns 100, I want all of us to come to her birthday party. So that would be an awesome party. I'd be all about that. So if we haven't had a chance to meet, my name is Brian. I'm the pastor here at Life Church Livonia. And I would love to have a chance to meet you. If we've never met, let's connect after the service. And I want to piggyback just for a brief moment on what Greg said in the announcements today about training camp. I am passionate about this event. If you serve in any capacity here at Life Church Livonia, or you would like to serve at Life Church Livonia, this is the event for you. We partner with a couple of other churches in the area, Life Church Southfield and Life Church Canton, and we put on this event once a year. And this year, I'm more excited about it than I've ever been. Our speakers are going to be phenomenal. Friday night, Harvey Carey from Citadel of Faith Church in Detroit is coming to speak. He is one of my favorite pastors to listen to. It's amazing. The worship is going to be great. Friday night, it'll be led by Life Church Southfield's band. Get there if you can. Never let the $15 registration fee be the reason you don't come. If you're struggling with that, let us know. We will figure out a way. And really, it's going to be great food, great teaching, and an awesome opportunity to be invested so that you can serve well. And so make sure that you sign up for that. And also, as Greg mentioned, we're in the middle of a series. It's called Bless. And really what Bless is all about is an opportunity for us to engage in the mission of God. That God is on a mission to bring people who are far from Him, close to Him in a relationship, and that we get to be a part of that mission. That we get to be invited into that process with Him. And really what we've been doing over the last few weeks is unpacking the word bless, because every letter stands for a missional practice that God is inviting you and myself into. And if you call yourself a follower of Jesus, if you're a Christian, these are things that all of us should be doing. And if you're not a follower of Jesus yet, if you're just coming and checking things out, this is what Christianity is supposed to be about. And so you get an opportunity to hear the heart, the core of who God is calling us to be. And so we started with the B, begin with prayer, and we ask you to think about the people in your life that God was calling you to serve, that God was calling you to bless, and you submitted almost 500 names. We have a lot of them up here on the cross. We have to start with prayer. Prayer is where everything begins. If we want to step in to these missional habits, we need to start on our knees. And I'm so proud of you guys. I want to remind you to be praying for these people that you committed to praying for. We move from there to listening with care. Once God brings us these people that He's asking us to bless, we need to listen to them. Because if we don't listen, we won't actually know how to be a blessing to them. And we can't rush in, but we need to stop, pause, engage, and listen with care. It's part of how we become a blessing to the people around us. And sometimes it's all that people need. They don't need you to do anything for them other than listen to them, and it makes them feel known and seen and cared for and loved. And one of my favorite letters on the whole acronym is EAT. It's the E. Come on, I love to eat. And I missed last week. I was on vacation with my family, but I love to eat with people. And the reason is not only that I love food, but it's also I love the connection that happens over a table. It's a really natural place to get connected with people. And for us as Christians, we've been known as a group of people that eat together from the very beginning. The early first century Christians, they were known for their love feasts, the way that they gathered around a table and shared community. And it's a great way for you to connect with the people around you that God is calling you to bless. And then finally today, we have 2 more weeks, today and next week. And today is the first S, and it's serve in love. Serve with love. And this really is to be the hallmark of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And right now, I think we are in a time in our country where it's never been more important than we as Christians step up and serve people in love. Never have we been in a time where I think it's more important for us to model what it looks like to be about the needs of other people more than we are about our own needs. I couldn't even sleep last night because of some of the things that I read about in the news. I read about the awful hate crimes that are happening in Charlottesville as people are being run over by a car intentionally targeted. It's unbelievably despicable, and it makes me ill that happens still in our country. I read about a situation in India where the hospital couldn't afford to pay their oxygen bill, and so the supplier of oxygen just decided not to deliver it anymore, and 60 people died, 32 of whom were children. It's unbelievable. I look at the newspaper and I read things about crazy people with nuclear weapons trying to set them off like it's some game. And my heart breaks for our world. And it reminds me over and over again that we as the followers of Jesus are called to rise up, especially in times like this, and model something different. It isn't hatred. It's not enmity. It's not political. It's Jesus at the core of who we are, calling us to step up and step out and serve people in love. We were called to be a blessing, and it's time that we are to the nation and to the nations. This is super important to me, and it's super important to Jesus that we get this right, and we follow in his footsteps as we do it. And all of us know, every single one of us knows, that when we serve someone well, or when we are served well, it has the power to transform our experience. We know this to be true. Just think about the last time you were at a restaurant and you got terrible service. When you went in and you're paying for something and you're expecting to be served well and the person didn't serve you well at all. It can ruin your dining experience. My wife and my anniversary is coming up on Monday. It's tomorrow. And when I take her out to dinner, I expect good service, right? My cable TV and internet is being changed over this week, in part because I didn't get good service from my last company. I'm switching, and I'm praying to have good service when they come and fix it, because most people don't expect that from a cable TV company, right? You long for it, and you complain about it, but when you don't get it, it's frustrating. Your whole vacation can be ruined if you had poor service at a hotel that you paid for, because when we pay for a product, we expect, don't even demand good service. But when people serve us, not as a result of us paying them for a service, but when they just serve us out of love, doesn't it blow your mind? It surprises us. When people just choose to serve me, not because I'm at their restaurant or at their hotel or because they're my cable TV provider, but when they just choose to serve me, it blows me away. And it has the power to transform an experience maybe that I had low expectations for to an experience that actually is a blessing for me. And many of you might know this part about our story, but my family lived in Alaska for 5.5 years. I was serving a church there in a town called Eagle River. My middle son was born there. And part of that experience was lost to them because they were too young to experience it. My kids, especially my daughter Peyton and my son Caden, they were pretty young when we moved away. And so a lot of the things that I loved the most about Alaska, they never got to engage in. And one of those things is to fish. I love to fish for salmon on the Kenai River. It's one of my favorite things to do. It fills my soul, and I long to let them experience this on vacation. We went there last week. We had a bunch of frequent flyer miles left over, and when my wife and I said, we got to get our kids, our oldest kids, back to the place where they lived so they can experience it again. So I prepped. I brought fishing gear. I set it up with some friends, and we were going to go and do this fishing experience. And I got to be honest with you, I was really nervous about it. A, because I was afraid that I might ruin their experience, because I'd get all selfish and just want to engage it for myself, and I wouldn't teach them well. But the other reason that I was nervous about it is that fishing for salmon on the Kenai River can be a really difficult thing. Because there's a limited run of salmon. They come up a couple times a year, and everyone wants to catch them. And it's serious business, and everyone goes to the same places because there's limited access to safe places to fish along that river. So I was worried about that. And actually, the fishing gets so intense on the Kenai River that there's a phrase for it. They call it combat fishing. True story, combat fishing. I've actually seen people get angry because they're all standing next to each other, flipping their lines. And I've seen people get angry because the person next to them doesn't know what they're doing. And they pull out their knife and they slice the line. Most of the people here in this room, when you think combat fishing and you think Alaska, this is the image that comes to mind. It's that too, okay? But it's more than that. It's also this. Look at all those people lining the banks of the Kenai River. My wife took this picture in 2009. And I'll show you another one. This is more recent. The banks lined with people. And this wasn't even a busy day. Sometimes there will be people as close as 5 feet away from you, and you have to synchronize your casting over and over again as you fly fish for salmon. It's called combat fishing. And I was worried that my children would have a terrible experience on this river because the water is fast, there's bears, and the worst animals are the people, honestly. So the first day we get down to the Kenai River, and my expectations are pretty low, and we had a great experience. There was hardly anyone there. I was able to teach my kids how to fish. And the reason there was no one there is because there were hardly any fish there. It was my bad. We were too far upriver. The fish were still downstream, but it was great for us. We caught a few fish. We had a good experience because there was no one around. I was able to teach them what we were doing. And I said to my kids, okay, tomorrow we need to drive. We're going to go an hour downstream where the fish actually are, and we're going to engage this. But I was nervous. I was like, because that's where the people are going to be. So we drive up to this spot. I thought this is going to be a more secluded spot. We can get just a better spot on the river. And we got there. There's probably about 30 other people fishing there, so it wasn't too bad, about 15 feet in between, 10 to 15 feet in between each fisherman. And I was expecting it to be bad. But the first moment I get a fish on, the guy that we didn't even know, standing just a few feet upriver from me, lays down his fishing pole and jumps up, grabs his net to help me land the fish. You see, the section of river we were on, we didn't know this, but you actually needed a net here because there was no bank to step up on. You had to land the fish in the river. And I needed a net, and I didn't have one. And this man saw my need, and he met my need instantly, joyfully, setting down his own rod and reel to come and help me. I was like, this is blowing my mind. This is not combat fishing. And then a few minutes later, I have another fish on, and my daughter, Peyton, now it's her turn. She borrows this net from this guy, and she's trying to scoop my fish up. But the fish was too big for the net, and it wouldn't fit right, and she wasn't doing it properly. And this woman who was fishing downstream from us laid her rod and reel down, walked up, and taught my daughter how to net the fish. She stopped what she was doing to teach her how to do it. I was like, this is not combat fishing. And then as we get ready to clean our fish that we had caught, I'm standing by this table. We didn't bring nearly enough Ziploc bags to put the fillets in because we didn't think we'd have that much success. And this guy was like, hey, I have a bunch of extra ones. You want some Ziploc bags? And then another man overheard me say that my fillet knife was duller than I wanted it to be, and I was struggling to fillet the fish. And he said, hey, I brought a knife sharpener. Would you like me to sharpen your knife? And he took my knife from me, and he sharpened it on the side of the river. I was like, what is happening here? And their willingness to serve us in love, it transformed my idea of what fishing was like on the Kenai River in Alaska. It wasn't combat fishing at all. It was a joyful experience as we engaged this as a family. Their willingness to serve me in love transformed my experience. And in the same way, the way that we serve people in love has the power to transform and change their perception about who God is. It's way more important than fishing. Dramatically more. This is life and death, friends, that our willingness to serve people in love, it has the power to change their minds about Christians, about the church, about God. If we're willing to step up and step in and help people, serve people, to be a blessing to people. Jesus himself, as Greg alluded to earlier, he said this is part of his mission. It's part of why he actually came and walked the earth. He tells us in Mark chapter 10, he says, for even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. Jesus made it clear, this is part of my mission. I'm going to serve you. And we can hear those words and we can hear Jesus speak this mission out, but what did it actually look like in his life? How did he serve people? What were some of the missional practices that Jesus engaged in? And what I want to do today is I want to look through a story that's found just a few chapters prior to this in Mark chapter 7 that I think embodies for us Jesus' heart for service and the way that he became a blessing to people. And I just want to read that story to you this morning. It starts in Mark 7 in verse 31. Then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre and went through Sidon down to the Sea of Galilee and into the region of the Decapolis. There, some people brought to him a man who was deaf and could hardly talk, and they begged Jesus to place his hand on him. And after he took him aside, away from the crowd, Jesus put his fingers into the man's ears, and then he spit and touched the man's tongue. He looked up to heaven and with a deep sigh said to him, Ephphatha, which means, be opened. At this, the man's ears were opened, his tongue was loosened, and he began to speak plainly. And Jesus commanded them not to tell anyone, but the more he did so, the more they kept talking about it. People were overwhelmed with amazement. He has done everything well, they said. He even makes the deaf hear and the mute speak. They were overwhelmed and amazed at Jesus. Jesus far exceeded their expectations of what a religious teacher would have done in that time and place, because he served them. He blessed them. He engaged them, and it blew their mind and began to transform their very idea of who Jesus was and ultimately who God was through his acts of service. And just for a moment, I want to pause. This is a total aside, but there's a part of this story that I just want to highlight for a moment. It's when Jesus spits and then in his hand and then touches the guy's tongue. If you want to serve me well, keep your spit out of my mouth, all right? Because that's just gross, friends. It's disgusting. Unless your name is Jesus, don't put your spit in my mouth, all right? So that's a total aside. But are the stories interesting? Like, why does Jesus do the things he does? I have no idea. I wish I could actually say to him, Jesus, what's the deal with the spit and the tongue and the finger in the ear thing? But he did it, and it worked, right? And so maybe if you're struggling, maybe I need to spit maybe in people's mouths more. I don't know what's going on here. If you sit in the front row, you might actually catch some if I get really fired up. But listen, Jesus changed their perception about who God was because he was willing to serve them. So as we look at that story, we ask, well, what are some of the hallmarks of the way he did that? What are things from the story that we can learn? And I think the very first thing is that Jesus served those people who were in close proximity to him. How did he pick the people that he served? How did Jesus pick the people that he engaged? He picked the people that were right in front of him. The people that were in close proximity to him. He saw a need and he met the need. He didn't wait for the church or the government to meet the need. He just met it. He said, I can do it. It's within my power. I can make this happen. And he did. Jesus served those who were in close proximity to him. It says in the story, some people brought to him a man who was deaf. Where was there? It was the region of the Decapolis. It was where he was. He showed up. There was a guy there who couldn't hear and he couldn't speak well, and Jesus met his need because he was in close proximity to that man. And so many of us mistakenly believe that in order to serve well, in order to serve with love, it requires us to go on a plane, to fly to a distant country, to do a bunch of fundraising, come home and play a sweet slideshow. And those are important. I've been a part of a bunch of opportunities to serve people well doing just that thing. But more often than that, come opportunities for you and for me to serve people that are right in front of us right now. The people all around us. As we begin to ask the question, who is my neighbor? As we've asked the question right here, who is God calling me to serve? Who is my neighbor? God has already brought you to that place. There are some rare exceptions where you have to travel to serve the people that God wants you to serve. This story about Jesus was one of them. It says really clearly, then Jesus left the vicinity of Tyre, went through Sidon, down to the Sea of Galilee, into the region of the Decapolis. He had to go somewhere new to be in close proximity to the people that God wanted him to serve in that moment. He had a spiritual transfer. Like he get transferred to a new job. Well, there was a location transfer in this moment for Jesus. He took the journey so that he could be near the people that God wanted him to serve. And this is a truth that I know. This is really important. If you don't hear anything else this morning other than this, I want you to key on this statement. That God has either already placed you with the people that you are called to serve, or is about to send you to the people that you are to serve. This is huge. God has either already placed you with the people that you are to serve, or is about to send you to the people that you are to serve. And sometimes we are really resistant to this. We're really resistant to serve the people that are right in front of us because it seems like it's not a big enough deal, or we don't want to live in the place we live anymore. We're like, I've lived in Detroit my whole life. I don't want to serve in Detroit. I want to go somewhere else. But God is saying to you the whole time, listen, Detroit is where you live, and Detroit is where I've called you. Open your eyes to see the need. Serve the people that are already in close proximity to you. But then for some of you, a select few of you, God is about to send you to the people that you are called to serve, because there are new people that he wants you to be in close proximity to, the true people that you are called to. And when you get there, whether it's here in Livonia, in the inner city urban core of Detroit, or around the globe somewhere, when you get there, not only do you serve the people that are right there, but you serve them in the way that Jesus did, by serving them perceptively. Perceptively, what do I mean by that? Look at what it says. I love how the NET version of the story says it. After Jesus took him aside privately away from the crowd, he did all those crazy things. The spit on the tongue, and the finger in the ear, and the sigh, and the prayer. But first, he took him aside privately, away from the crowd. He did this because this man needed to be served perceptively. Jesus needed to see beyond the immediate need and see a deeper need that this man had. And I don't know about you, but being taken aside is almost never a good thing for me. It usually means I screwed up and did something really stupid. Like if my wife says to me, honey, come over here, it usually means I said something stupid or did something stupid. This is my classic move. But for Jesus, this wasn't because this guy did something wrong. It's because he loved this man. He was deaf. He struggled to get words to come out of his mouth. And I can imagine what his life might have been. And in my head, what I have pictured is this young man that lived on my street growing up. His name was John. John lived about 10 houses away from me all growing up. He was about 5 years older than me. He was deaf, and he could speak, but his words were very difficult to understand. He would sign to us, and we didn't even know what he was signing. And he also had some other disabilities, and he would just wander the neighborhood. And I have to tell you that the young boys and girls in my community, in my neighborhood, were awful to him. They were awful to him. They made fun of him. They were uncomfortable when he came around. If we were at the bus stop, they would throw things at him. It was terrible. And it broke my heart. Even as a young man, it broke my heart. I never engaged in that same behavior, because I had this sense that it was wrong. And we would actually invite him into our home from time to time. It wasn't often, but we did. And it was a really difficult situation for him. And I imagine, when I picture this man that Jesus is about to heal, I picture John. The man that everyone had made fun of, that people had made a spectacle of his entire life. Why was it important that Jesus took him aside privately? Because this man was probably done being a spectacle. This was a great way to give him his dignity back. To serve him perceptively away from the crowd. The people that God brings into your life, your next door neighbors, your coworkers, the people at your office, the people at the gym, the people at your school, wherever you find yourself, that God is asking you to step in and serve. You have to be willing to look past the outer part of their behavior and see the story behind it. Otherwise, you will never be able to serve them well. To my shame, I haven't always done this well. I had a neighbor that I used to have just to the south of me, that for the first 2 years I lived in the house I live in now, I would describe privately as my grumpy neighbor. We didn't engage with her well. I didn't serve her well. I'm actually ashamed of this. And it took until the final year that she lived there for me to actually engage her the way that she needed to be engaged. And what changed it for me, totally changed it for me, is I finally heard her story. I finally heard her story. And it changed it for me. Because I found out the reason behind the countenance, the reason behind the grump. And it actually gave me an opportunity to finally meet her needs and to serve her in a way that actually brought her life. And it took me 2 years to figure this out, friends, and I'm embarrassed by that. If we're going to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, we can't assume that we know the stories of the people around us. We actually have to engage those people, find out what those stories are, and it will transform the way that you are able to love them and bless them, because now you'll be personally involved in their story. And that's the next P. When we ask the Lord to give us ability to be perceptive about a person, it actually engages us personally. And Jesus engaged this deaf man personally. He went beyond just understanding his pain to engaging his pain. It says in Mark chapter 7, verse 34, that after he's engaged this man, he pulls him away privately, and it says, then he looked up to heaven and said with a sigh, Ephphatha. And as we study this in the original language, we realize that this sigh that he made, it wasn't like a simple little sigh. It was a deep groan, like, oh. The kind of groan that comes out of your mouth when you find out really bad news, when you hear that your close friend's husband has cancer. No. That moment when you find out that you've lost your job. This deep sigh wells up from within you because you feel it. Ephphatha. Jesus engaged his story. He was perceptive enough to see it and willing to step into it. When we're willing to engage people's stories, it changes our ability to serve them well. And it enables us to serve them with love. Just think about a time in your own life when you finally heard the backstory to someone. I see it every single time that we end up sharing the story of our youngest son with his teachers. Every single time. We start out the school year, and it's a difficult beginning oftentimes, and the teachers aren't wanting to engage, and we sense that there's an opportunity there to share a little bit of his story, and we share his story, and I can watch their faces change. I'm really closed about that story, but with them, I feel like they need to know it, and when I share his story with his teachers, I watch them sigh inside as they engage his story personally, and it transforms the way they serve him as his teacher. Every single time. Because there's a story behind the countenance. There's a story there that needs to be told, that needs to be heard, and it enables them to serve him with love. And I've been blown away by the Livonius Public School District and their willingness to serve my son with love. Unbelievable. Are you willing to hear people's stories? Are you willing to stop and engage long enough to be actually able to serve them personally? Jesus was. And it transformed people's perception about who God was. Our world desperately needs this. My friend Nan Walter, her and her husband Dave, they lived in Bangladesh for decades, serving the people there. And their heart was broken for these people. So much so that they were willing to engage it personally. They gave a piece of their heart to these people. They speak their language, Bengali, and as they came home to the United States to live here and to serve here, began looking for opportunities to engage around this area. And Hamtramck here, right in Detroit, is filled with people from Bangladesh. Filled with people that speak the same language that became part of their heart language as they ministered to people. And now, Nan, she works in that city. She works with those people because she's personally invested in their stories. She's not just their teacher. She prays for them. She cares for them. She gathers supplies for them. She takes time out of her summers to engage them deeply. And I'm so proud of her willingness to do that personally and perceptively. And to take us with her. A few weeks ago, some of you from within our church went with her down into Hamtramck, and you served those people with love. It's what the gospel is all about. It's what the good news of Jesus is all about. And people all the time ask Nan, why is it you do what you do? Well, it's because of Jesus, but it's because Jesus broke her heart for those people. Because she was willing to get involved personally. But when we do this, when we serve people well, when we serve people in love, and we do it with the people that are right around us, and we do it with this deeper perception than is normal, and when we engage personally, we cannot forget that the key part of this entire story that we hear about this deaf man who couldn't speak is when Jesus served him powerfully. He served him powerfully. And the key hallmark of the entire story happens after he draws him aside, after he spits and touches his tongue and sticks his fingers in his ear. It says, and immediately the man's ears were opened, his tongue loosened, and he spoke plainly. He was healed because Jesus served him powerfully. And we forget to do this. We're afraid to do this. We wonder if it would even work if we tried to do this. And we only serve people based on our limited resources, our limited funds, our limited abilities. And we miss out on countless opportunities to display for the world how good our God is, how powerful our God is. We forget that in John chapter 14, Jesus said, hey, all these things you see me doing, you're going to do greater things than these. We forget that. Better than healing a guy who can't hear and struggles to speak. You're going to do better things than that. If you believe in me, you will do it. And we can't be afraid to ask for the miraculous. As we serve the people around us, if they are sick, we have to pray. Pray that God would heal them. If they have an addiction, we ask God to free them. If they are stuck in a relationship that seems hopeless, we can't be afraid to pray that God would do a miracle and make a reconciliation happen. Jesus served with power, tapping into the very power of God on behalf of this man that he was called to serve. I heard this really beautiful story of a church in Stavanger, Norway. And this church was trying to live into this. They believed what Jesus said. They believed you will do greater things than these. And they started praying for people in their church to be healed. And it was a small church. And they noticed that when they prayed for people to be healed, that oftentimes it didn't work. They started keeping track of it. And only about 10% of the time when they prayed for people to be healed or prayed for a miracle, would that miracle happen. And I'm thinking to myself, 10% sounds awesome, right? But this is what they realized. That they were hoarding the power of God to themselves, only for their church, only for people that showed up on a Sunday. And they got this wild, crazy idea to go to the town square, right in the middle of Stavanger, Norway, an area of the world that is very underchurched, very few people that believed. Desperately in need of the gospel, the good news of Jesus Christ. They said, we're going to go to the town square and we're going to put up a sign that says free prayer. Anyone who comes, we're going to pray boldly on behalf of those people. Guess what happened? When they prayed for people in their church, 10% of the time God did a miracle. When they prayed for people in the town square and they served them with love, 80% of the time God answered their prayer with a miracle. 80%! It's God's power on display as a witness to who he is. Not hoarded for ourselves, but given out freely. Are we willing to serve God with the power that he's made available to us? There are people all around you, in close proximity to you. That's the first step, to open your eyes and pray, just like you already did. It's possible that the names of the people that God is calling you to serve are already on your list. So proximity is the first key to following in Jesus' footsteps. And remember that God has either sent you already to the people you are called to serve, or is about to send you to the people you are to serve. That God has either sent you already, you are already in place in the perfect position to serve the people that God's called you to, or he's about to send you to the people that you're called to serve. And when we get there, we're called to serve them perceptively. First, seek to understand. It's the first thing we have to do. Seek to understand. Don't assume that you know the whole story. Don't assume that you understand their pain. And as you hear their pain, we're called to engage it personally, to allow it to affect us. Because whoever we're called to serve, we need to feel their experience because it allows us to understand them and to connect with them on a deeper level than we ever could without this. And finally, we're called to serve powerfully, to ask God to do what only God can do. Stop depending on your limited resources. I have a limited ability as your pastor to serve you well with love unless I pray, unless I tap into the power that God makes available, not just to pastors, not just to people in the Bible, but to all of you who call him Lord and Savior. And so I want to challenge you today. Specifically, two different challenges that I have for you today. And one of these challenges is probably only for about 1% of the people in this room. Maybe it's only for one person in this room. Maybe you're the second kind of person that God is about to send you to the people that you're called to serve. So this is the challenge. Number one, you probably weren't ready for this today. What if God's calling you to relocate? Would you go? What if God's calling you to relocate? Would you go? And it doesn't have to be all the way across the world. What if it's simply to a new neighborhood? What if it's to a new region of Metro Detroit? But what if it is halfway across the globe? Would you be willing to relocate, to be in close proximity to the people that God is calling you to serve? This isn't for everybody. Some of you have already done it. You did it when you came to Life Church Livonia. My family did. We relocated to come here just to plant this church. Because God told us, I want you to be near those people so you can serve those people. And we did it. And it was crazy. And it was hard, but it was right. Is that you today? If it's you, this is what I urge you to do. Find people to talk to about it. Find people to pray alongside of you about this. Get with trusted people who follow Jesus and ask them to look at this and look at it with wisdom and with eyes that have willingness to see what God might do with you and through you. Is God calling you to a spiritual transfer? Meaning that you're called to go to a new place and relocate to serve the people that God's calling you to serve. If that's you, I'd love to talk with you. And honestly, we already have people in our church that have done this. I'm proud of this, that already people from our church have left. Most pastors are not wanting people to leave their church, but I would love for people to leave their church to serve. And we're eventually going to plant another church because we believe that God wants to have more healthy missional churches in Metro Detroit, not fewer. And at some point, I'm going to be asking some of you to relocate to go to a new church, and you're going to not want to go because you're comfortable here. Prep your hearts. The day is coming, my friends, when that's going to happen. Is God calling you to relocate? And for the rest of you, probably the 98% of you that are sitting in this room, I'm going to give you a second challenge. I'm going to call it the 24 hours of action challenge. Those people that he's already brought to mind, the people that you've already written their name down, the people that are already right next to you, that you're in close proximity to you, I challenge you to serve them with love sometime in the next 24 hours. Don't wait until it's convenient. Don't wait until you have all your ducks in a row and all your plans laid out and all your schedules and the perfect opportunity. Just do it. See the need and meet the need and wait for God to work. 24 hours of action. What if we did this as a church? What if every single one of you did this in the next 24 hours? It would have a massive impact in our community. There are hundreds of us here today. Hundreds of us. Almost 500 names on this list. What if every single one of us picked one person to bless? It would have a ripple effect throughout our entire community. 24 hours of action, but don't let it end there. We strongly considered having tables in the back of the room today, setting up a bunch of booths and giving you some spoon feeding you some opportunities to serve. We will do that at some point, but we felt like we would do you a disservice if we did that today. To say, this is how you should live into this message. This is how you should serve with love. The reason we do you a disservice when we do that is because you already know who it is. It's already the person that you know, the person you see on a regular basis. Do something about it this week. I commit to doing this in my life, and I'm calling you to do this in yours, and I believe God will work miracles. 2 challenges. 1, relocate. Move to where God wants you to love people. 2, see the need, meet the need. And finally, there's another group of people in this room. A group of people that came here today, they're not sure about God, they're not sure about this whole church thing, about Jesus. And the greatest way that I could serve you this morning is by telling you about the good news of Jesus Christ. That this man, he walked this earth, he came to serve you and to serve me, to lay his life down for us so that we who are far from God could be in a close relationship with our Creator. And it's you that he's calling into a relationship. It's us that he's wanting to love. He's wanting to give us a brand new opportunity for a brand new life. Some of you have been coming on a regular basis and you're this close to giving your life over to Jesus, but you've resisted. You've resisted because you're not sure what that actually looks like. You're not sure what the future holds. You resisted because maybe you grew up kind of going to church. You grew up because your family kind of believed in God. And so you've always kind of believed in God, but you've never chosen to actually personally trust God with your life. The greatest gift I could give to you, the greatest way I could serve you today is to say, come to Jesus. Give your life to Jesus. Everything will be different. Everything will be changed. But it'll start with the inside of you. And if that's you today, I want to pray for you right now. You know who you are. You can feel it in your chest because your heart is beating rapidly. I know you. I've been there. I've sat in your chair. Would you pray with me? So Jesus, I know that there are people in this room right now that are right on the edge. Maybe they have been far from you for a long time. Maybe they grew up in the church and they've wandered off the path. Or God, maybe they've never been to church before, but they're sitting here today and there's something happening in their spirit. And they know that you are calling them back, that you're calling them home. And if that's you this morning, maybe you need to make a recommitment to Jesus. And I just invite you to pray with me. Or maybe you're going to make a first-time commitment. Just simply pray with me in the quiet of your own heart and say, God, here I am. I don't even have it all figured out yet, God, but I know that I need you. And so I choose right now, God, to give my life to you, to trust that all of my past mistakes are wiped clean by you, and that you will set my feet on a brand new path. I commit my life, or I recommit my life to you today. Jesus, make me new. Bring me home. Show me what it looks like to be in relationship with you. And for the rest of you who are here today, God, I pray for everyone here, for the ones who are sitting here knowing today, God, that they are the ones who need to relocate, God. I pray that you would give them the boldness and the wisdom to do it after your heart. God, for the ones who maybe are also sitting here, the 98% who are struggling to figure out who to serve, God, I pray that right now you'd bring a person to their mind and that you would give them the resources to meet that need. Give us boldness. Give us courage. Give us passion. Give us love so that we could show the world who you are and break their perception of what the church is about. May love rule in our city and in our nation this week in the name of Jesus. Amen.